The day my daughter walked down the aisle, I sat outside on a side balcony, where the staff had set up a few extra tables for leftover guests. The music swelled, people leaned in with their phones raised, and laughter echoed under the chandeliers. But from where I sat, I could only see the backs of people's heads and the reflection of light bouncing off wine glasses. I was her mother, yet I was placed in the shadows, as if my presence was something to be tucked away. And I said nothing, not a word. I remained quiet, even though my heart ached. I stayed silent, even though 1,000 memories of raising her flooded through me. I swallowed the bitterness, because I knew something they did not. I held a secret. My late brother, Jonathan, who had built an empire no one in my daughter's new family could even imagine, had left me the deeds to private isles valued at $85 million. Yes. When my daughter walked down the aisle, I remained quiet about the 85 million private isles my billionaire brother left me. And it was a good thing I did. Because 1 week later, her groom showed up at my door with a lawyer in tow, demanding to claim them. Before I take you there, let me pause for a moment. If you're listening now, and if you believe stories like mine matter, stories about mothers and women who have been erased but rise quietly with dignity, please give this video a like, subscribe, and click the little bell. That way, you'll never miss the next story of strength, quiet justice, and healing. Now, let me take you back to that balcony. I was 69 years old, a widow for 10 years. My name is Judith Myers. I raised my daughter, Rachel, through every scraped knee and broken heart. I once held a household together, sacrificed my dreams for my family, and carried on when my husband passed, leaving me alone to rebuild a life from pieces. People see gray hair and quiet posture and think it means weakness. But the truth is, silence can be armor. That night, in my blue dress that I had sewn adjustments into myself, I sat at a wobbly table outside, with a draft sneaking under the drapes. The wedding planner had clearly run out of room inside. Someone had decided I would be fine, out here. And I smiled politely, pretending it didn't sting. I held my glass of water, not even champagne, and I watched Rachel, my only child, promise forever to Gregory. I told myself, let her have this day, even if it means I disappear into the corner of it. People forget that mothers notice everything. I noticed Gregory's smile that stretched wider for the photographers than for my daughter. I noticed how his mother, Marjorie, positioned herself at the front row center as though she were royalty. And I noticed how no one asked me if I was comfortable sitting in the cold. Invisible mother. That's who I was that day. But invisibility, I've learned, can be a powerful position. When no one sees you, you can see everything. And what I saw convinced me more than ever to remain quiet about Jonathan's gift. Jonathan, my older brother. Brilliant, stubborn, larger than life. We had been through so much together. He never married, never had children. Work was his companion, and I was his confidant. In the last months of his life, when the cancer hollowed his once broad frame, he looked at me and said, "Jude, they'll try to charm you, guilt you, and pressure you. Don't let them. These islands aren't trophies. They're protection. Use them wisely." I promised him I would. So on Rachel's wedding day, I kept my lips pressed together. I didn't correct the assumptions. I didn't tell Marjorie or Gregory's friends or anyone else that the woman sitting outside, with a simple shawl around her shoulders, had the paperwork to lands worth more than every guest's fortune combined. I stayed quiet. I played invisible. Because I knew that sometimes silence is not surrender, it's strategy. And in the days that followed, my silence became a shield. Rachel and Gregory left for a short honeymoon, all smiles on social media. But beneath the sparkle of their wedding pictures was a truth I had sensed, but not yet proven. The truth would walk straight up my driveway exactly 1 week later, briefcase in hand. When I opened the door that afternoon, Gregory stood there. His tailored suit hung a little too tight, as if the fabric strained against him. Beside him was a man who introduced himself quickly, smooth voice, sharp eyes. He carried papers that he laid across my kitchen table without asking permission. "Just some documents, Mrs. Myers," he said, his tone oiled with charm. "For your protection. For the family's security. All we need is your signature here." I glanced at the top page, Power of Attorney. I set down the teacup in my hand, steam curling between us. And in that moment, everything Jonathan had warned me about sharpened into clarity. My silence had kept me safe. But now, it would have to become my weapon. I stood at the kitchen table, staring at papers the groom and his lawyer had left. Steam from my tea drifted into afternoon light. Before I called my attorney, my mind walked back to a different room and to my brother in his final winter. Jonathan had always been the weather in our family. He built companies the way other men built barns. We were 10 years apart. He treated me like a partner long before I believed it. When the scans turned against him, I became his driver, his calendar, his last witness. I remember the hospital light. It flattened everything. He wore a gray robe. His shoulders looked smaller than memory. He opened a drawer and handed me a thin leather folder and a rolled nautical chart. His voice was frayed, but steady. "Some people love power the way moths love the porch light," he said. "Do not mistake flattery for love." He unrolled the chart across the blanket. Green freckles marked the aisles. Blue veins traced channels. He had circled coves and written notes in the margins. Shallow reef here, osprey rookery here, fresh water spring here. Then he took my hand and looked hard at me. "Do not turn this into a spectacle, Jude. Do not wave it around. Do not speak. This is armor, not a trophy." The folder held copies of deeds, trust instruments, and a letter in his neat square hand. Ownership had already been placed in a structure simple for me to manage, but hard for anyone to raid. My name appeared where it needed to appear. A bank officer would release packets only if I arrived with identification and a phrase from a poem we both loved. Jonathan prepared everything the way he launched a company. Precise steps, redundancies, no room for panic. Then he gave me something ordinary, a linen handkerchief with our initials, J and M, stitched at the corner in thread the color of bay water. That week, I used it to dab the sweat on his brow when the fever rose. It held a trace of his cologne, cedar and pepper. "Keep it close," he said. "When people talk too loudly around you, hold this. Remember who you are. Remember what we built from scratch." After he died, I stored the folder and the chart in a small fireproof box at the back of my bedroom closet, behind winter blankets. The handkerchief I kept in a tin beside my tea, folded into a square. Rachel never asked. No one did. That was how Jonathan wanted it. Anonymity as a moat. He was right. Wealth announced too soon behaves like blood in the water. I told no one about the aisles. Not my daughter. Not my neighbors. Not the women at church who brought casseroles when my husband passed. The people who love you can still make terrible choices under pressure. Charm can dress as care. Urgency can impersonate devotion. Jonathan knew how easily the vulnerable are invited to sign away the things that keep them safe. He asked me to honor him with discretion. There was another reason I kept quiet. The aisles are not only assets on a balance sheet, they are living places. On the map, he marked a sand spit where sea turtles climb at night. He drew a small star where he wanted the sunset watched. He wanted coves kept clean and mangroves left to sow the shoreline after storms. He wanted sanctuary, not spectacle. So I practiced the discipline he taught me. Silence, patience, paperwork in order. When I felt small, I touched the handkerchief. When cornered, I traced the blue channels until my breath slowed. The map reminded me that ground can remember, that land holds faith when people do not. Standing at my kitchen table now, I slid the lawyer's note under the leather folder that holds my truth. No one knew. That secrecy had guarded me at the wedding. It would guard me again. I would not brag. I would protect. And when the time came to answer, I would use the language Jonathan taught me best. Signatures, not speeches. Boundaries, not noise. A life defended by quiet law. The venue looked like a magazine spread you leave on a coffee table to pretend life is larger than worry. Chandeliers poured light from a vaulted ceiling. Roses climbed white arches. A string quartet hurried through Vivaldi as if speed were elegance. Staff in black drifted with champagne flutes that rang like tiny bells. Guests queued beneath a neon monogram while phones glittered. From my seat on the side balcony, the celebration felt distant. Faces turned toward the spectacle while my chair faced the draft. Inside the hall, a wall of cameras blinked like fireflies, capturing every curated moment. The planner's headset crackled with commands no one questioned. A violinist smiled at the timeline taped to her music stand. Presentation mattered more than breath. Image mattered more than tenderness that night. For them, spectacle. Gregory's family treated the night like a brand launch. His mother, Marjorie, carried the calm authority of a stage manager and pointed photographers into place without raising her voice. Two uncles compared cufflinks and laughed too loud. A cousin flashed a watch the size of a saucer. The best man practiced a speech loaded with venture language. Even the cake wore gold leaf, as if sugar needed a sponsor. Rachel was radiant. She glows when she laughs. She has since she was small. Yet the evening did not orbit her as much as it orbited an image of her. The planner guided her from tableau to tableau. Smile here, nod there, dip the shoulder for the camera, vanish behind the roses. She glanced toward the balcony, and I raised my hand. A server crossed between us, and the moment dissolved. Someone brought me a blanket. The gesture felt less like kindness and more like quality control. No venue wants a shivering silhouette near the photos. I wrapped it around my shoulders and watched candles tremble in their glass cylinders. Then memory rose without warning and set another picture beside the glitter. I remembered the church hall, where I danced with my late husband after our small wedding. The floorboards clicked under rented shoes, and the punch tasted like melted sherbet. We were poor in money and rich in sincerity. My mother held my bouquet when my fingers cramped from shaking hands. People knew my name. They called me to the center to cut the cake. I was not perfect, but I was visible. The world then felt smaller and nearer. Or maybe I simply belonged to it. Now I sat beside a fern and a space heater that hummed. A cousin from Gregory's side took a quick photo and promised to edit the heater out. I thanked him. I tightened the blanket and breathed. I used to stand at the center. Today, I stood at the edges. The sentence did not break me. It told the truth. Gregory entered like an actor hitting his mark. The bridal party performed a choreographed spin. The quartet slid into a pop hook. The room behaved like an audience. When he reached Rachel, he lifted her hand with a flourish designed for lenses. The kiss that followed looked like a logo reveal. I clapped because clapping is a mother's profession. Near the toasts, Marjorie approached my table with 2 planners in her wake. She rested a hand on my shoulder the way one pats a family dog. "You are comfortable out here," she said. "It is quieter. You can rest." I told her I was fine and sipped water. I did not mention the draft or the empty chair on my left that no one tried to fill. Rachel reached me just before the first dance. Her veil had snagged on a brooch. She laughed as I freed it with fingers that have mended everything from hems to hearts. "Mom, is the seat okay?" she asked, already watching Gregory tilt his chin from across the room. I told her yes. She squeezed my hands and disappeared back into choreography. That small exchange carried the shape of our pressure. Rachel wants to please everyone at once. Gregory prefers managing to marrying. I want my daughter to step into joy without stepping on herself. We are 3 points of a triangle that does not quite close. Dinner arrived late to my table. The steak had cooled to polite. I ate anyway. Cold food fills a stomach. It does not feed a heart. A server refilled my water and called me ma'am with a kindness I decided to keep. Inside, speeches praised Gregory's vision and drive. When Rachel's friend tried to toast her kindness, the DJ cut in with an upbeat track as if sincerity threatened the tempo. Laughter swallowed the rest of the words. A distant aunt leaned over the rail and asked where I got my dress. I told her I had taken in the waist myself. She nodded, impressed by effort more than cost, then vanished back into the room's bright weather. From the balcony, I read people the way sailors read a bay. I saw Gregory bask in applause like a man warming his hands at a heat lamp. I saw Marjorie measure status in camera angles and seating charts. I saw Rachel shining and straining, a lantern in wind. I whispered a prayer that her flame would not imitate the storm. I stayed quiet. I held the blanket, and beneath it, the corner of a linen handkerchief with our initials, J and M center or edge. I told myself, I am still a mother. The night will end, and the truth arrives on its own time. When the last sparkler hissed out and the neon monogram went dark, I folded the blanket, thanked the staff, and took the long way to the parking lot. I unlocked my car and sat for a breath, hands on the wheel, steady enough to drive home. The doorbell rang a week after the wedding, bright as a timer ending. I had just set water to boil when the chime cut through the house. Through the glass, I saw Gregory on my porch. Beside him stood a man with a leather briefcase, eyes sharp behind silver frames. I opened the door and stepped back far enough to be polite without surrendering space. "Afternoon, Mrs. Myers," the stranger said. "I am Daniel Crowe, counsel." We hoped for a few minutes. Gregory did not wait for permission. He crossed the threshold and took my kitchen chair. The lawyer hovered until I nodded. I set cups on the table. The kettle sang. I poured tea for myself and slid water toward them. Gregory pretended to sip and set the cup on bare wood. Crowe opened his briefcase. He fanned out documents banded by a blue strip and tapped the top page with a pen. General durable power of attorney, he said. Standard, protective, efficient. In an emergency, your family can assist with financial and medical decisions. I glanced at the header. Blank signature lines waited like open gates. A corner box read, immediate and durable, not springing, not limited. Gregory leaned forward, elbows on the table. Rachel is worried about you, he said. We all are. This is for your good, for peace. You should not have to juggle paperwork alone. Crow turned a page. Flags marked where to initial and sign. If you initial here and here, he said, we can finalize today. I let silence fill the room. Crow added more words about convenience, protection, family. Gregory looked at the kitchen clock and then at me. Judy, he said, using a nickname I do not carry, we have a lot on our plate this week. It would be a kindness if you signed. Now I placed my hand on the linen handkerchief folded beneath my palm and felt the weave steady me. I will have my attorney read it first, I said. The air changed. Crow's pen stopped tapping. Gregory's smile tightened. Of course, Crow said. We can leave a copy. He slid a second set across. I skimmed line by line. The instrument granted broad authority to access accounts, convey property, amend trusts, make gifts, initiate debt, even change beneficiaries. It waived bond and accounting. It allowed an agent to act in the agent's own interest. I set the packet down. How did you come to prepare this for me? I asked. Standard package for our elder clients, Crow said. Responsible families retain us to keep loved ones protected. Who retained you? I asked. Gregory answered first. We did. I did, as family. Do you represent me? I asked. For the purposes of this protective instrument, we serve the family unit, Crow said. That is not representation, I said. It is proximity. I set my teacup down. The porcelain clicked like a small gavel. Leave your card, I said. I will pass it to my attorney. Gregory tugged at his cuff, eyes flicking to my hands, searching for a pen that would not appear. This feels adversarial, he said. Rachel wants harmony. She wants no secrets. Harmony is not achieved by haste, I said, and secrets are not the same as privacy. Crow tried again. We can make the authority springing. We can narrow classes of transactions. The goal is to make things simple. You have made your goal simple, I said. Mine is clarity. I pushed the stack back toward him. No signatures today. Gregory leaned in. I respect boundaries, he said, which is something people say before they test one. But there is urgency. We need to make sure taxes are handled, accounts consolidated, liabilities addressed. Whose liabilities? I asked. He misstepped. Household items, wedding invoices, strategic obligations. Those are not my liabilities, I said. Crow uncapped his pen and recapped it. The click ticked like a metronome. He slid a business card across the table. Thank you, I said. I tucked it under a ceramic trivet for now. Email a digital copy as well. Gregory stood. The chair scraped. He placed both hands on the table. I hope you will not make this harder than it needs to be. I hope you will not either, I said, and let the silence do the rest. Crow gathered the papers. We appreciate your time, he said. We will await contact from your counsel. At the door, Gregory tried once more. Rachel will be disappointed. Rachel is my daughter, I said. She knows I think better after tea. He offered a tight nod and stepped onto the porch. Crow followed. I closed the door and set the latch with the steady motion of someone folding a map along a known crease. In the sink, the cups left rings that wiped clean with a cloth. I placed the card in a small dish by the stove and wrote the time of their visit in a spiral notebook. I dialed my attorney and left a message. Then I stood still. The kitchen settled. The house felt level again. My silence had not been surrender. It had been a foundation. I lifted the handkerchief to my cheek and returned it to its place. The kettle sighed as the element cooled. Inside, I breathed, grounded, untroubled by empty lines waiting for a name that would not be written today. I was drying the cups when a soft knock tapped my front door. 3 small beats like a sparrow testing glass. I did not rush. I folded the towel, looked through the side window, and found Eleanor on the porch with a pie tin in her palm and a canvas tote on her shoulder. She lives 2 houses down. Widow, gardener, a voice so gentle you might miss its steel. I opened the door but kept the chain set. Habit guards peace. She lifted the pie a few inches, like an offering at a plain altar. "Apple and ginger," she said. "You looked pale last week." Sweetness persuades the blood. I unhooked the chain and waved her in. We moved to the kitchen. I set the pie on the counter and poured tea. Steam rose. The house quieted. "You had visitors," she said. "Rachel's husband and a lawyer," I said. "Papers. Urgency. A pen placed where my hand should be." Eleanor nodded. "I saw them." The lawyer shone like a cuticle pushed too far. "I am all right," I said. "I told them my attorney reads before I sign." "That sentence is a roof," she said. "Stand under it." We drank in quiet. Eleanor glanced at the documents but did not touch them. She respects lines the way a seamstress respects chalk. "Do you know why I bring pies?" she asked. "Because you are kind," I said. "Because someone should knock without taking," she said. "I know how it feels when every knock arrives with a smile holding a request." She drew a small breath, deliberate, steady. "Years ago, my son put a clipboard in my lap while I was recovering from surgery. He said the forms would make insurance simple, that he and his wife would manage the bills while I rested." I signed. The drugs had not left my head. 2 months later, I learned I had granted him authority over the house. He borrowed against it. A year later, the bank took the porch where I taught him to braid rope. That is why I live alone in the bungalow now. My hand went to the linen handkerchief in my pocket. I felt the stitch of our initials and thought of a different hospital room, a different man whose gift had been protection, not a trap. Grief and gratitude can sit in the same chair if you let them. "I am sorry," I said. "I was sorry for too long," she said. "Now I am exact." Be exact, Jude. Exact is how we survive once we stop apologizing for wanting to stay whole. She set the cup down with a click. "They will come back," she said. "They will choose a softer word than control and sew it onto the same hook." Do not argue. Let the hook catch air. I told her about the wedding and my balcony seat. Her mouth tightened, then softened. "They put you out with the heaters," she said. "Invisible is a trick they play until you perform visible obedience. Refuse the trick." "At least the sky was clear," I said. "You have a view of the truth," she said. "Use it." She reached into her tote and pulled out a spiral notebook with tabs and a pen. "Here," she said. "Write the date and time of every visit. Staple cards. Record what was said and what was not. paper can be armor if you choose the right weight. I opened to the first page and wrote the hour of Gregory's call, the names, the phrase general durable power of attorney, the lines I spoke, and the lines they pressed. The act felt like stitching a seam that had begun to fray. Eleanor watched with the patience of a gardener seeing a sprout take hold. "I am proud of you," she said. I smiled at the table, the kind of smile that arrives when hope stops feeling foolish. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Silence settled like a familiar coat. Eleanor stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. "You are not invisible, Jude," she said. "Not in this house, not on this street, not in eyes that still know how to measure worth." The sentence landed in my chest. I walked her to the porch. Crows argued in the maple. "When they return," she said, "pour tea. Hold the line. Let your yes be a full yes, and your no be a door." I thanked her for the pie and for the notebook. She left with her stride. I closed the door and set the chain. Inside, I placed the notebook beside the leather folder Jonathan left me. Armor beside armor, sweetness beside law. The house stood quiet, and I no longer mistook quiet for emptiness. It sounded like readiness, truly. The errand was ordinary, which made what I learned feel sharper. I went to the pharmacy for vitamins and stamps, parked by the curb, and stepped into the lobby where the newspaper rack turns with a lazy squeak. I took a basket and drifted toward the rotating stand. Outside, a dark SUV idled in the loading zone. I recognized the profile, Gregory's jaw, Marjorie's helmet of hair. Their voices carried, shaped by impatience and glass. I stood behind the news rack and ran a finger along a magazine spine. I let the world forget I was there. "You went too soft," Marjorie said. "She is a widow. Widows sign when you reassure them. You should have walked out with signatures." "The packet was strong," Gregory said. "She is stubborn. She kept saying her attorney would read it. Where does a woman like that get an attorney?" "Everyone has an attorney if you prod them," Marjorie said. "The timing is a mess. The florist wants the final wire by Friday. The caterer is calling. The venue is holding the deposit. The platinum is maxed again, and the rate jumped. We cannot float another week," Gregory thumped the wheel. "I thought Rachel would nudge her." "She barely tried. Rachel is sentimental," Marjorie said. "She will choose peace until the bill comes due." You must think for both of you I shifted and the stand squeaked. A cashier glanced up. I lifted the basket and pretended to compare greeting cards. "Silence is easier when it has a purpose," Marjorie continued. "You should not have left the originals. You let her feel powerful. She needs to feel dependent. Show her penalties. Emphasize confusion. Present it as protection. The general durable only works for us if it is signed. Otherwise, we have risk and invoices. I could tell her we need to consolidate accounts to get her better rates," Gregory said. "We can start with small transfers. Once I am agent, we refinance the condo, roll her under our umbrella, clean the slate." "Exactly," Marjorie said. "The bank will approve if a principal has property." "Does she own the house outright?" "I think so," Gregory said. "She lives small. There has to be something. People like her sit on accounts they do not use." "Then hurry," Marjorie said. "Interest is compounding and the line of credit is due." "Do not tell Rachel the numbers. She would spiral." The wedding, I realized, was a palace of rentals built on debt. Gold leaf on a cake. Heat rose in my neck. I steadied it by touching the linen handkerchief in my pocket, the one with J and M stitched. Jonathan once said, moths mistake bright things for safety. Debt is a bright thing when you are desperate. Vendors talk, Gregory said. The videographer threatened to hold the footage. Let him try, Marjorie said. You will negotiate when the time is right. Today, your job is Judith. If she signs, we are clear by Monday and can reset the cards. How do we explain it to Rachel? He asked. You call it planning, she said. You tell her her mother is relieved to have help. If Judith balks, remind her about taxes. Fear is a lever. She will not understand the forms. Keep the language quick. I stood still as a heron. I let the words settle until they organized themselves. Gregory again. What about the island's rumor? My breath thinned. Marjorie sniffed. Old men exaggerate assets. Brothers exaggerate more. Even if she has land, it will be entangled. The power of attorney unlocks doors without a map. We do not need the whole castle. We need stairwells. Once you are agent, you can move. There it was, the plan dressed as concern. They did not see me as family. They saw me as leverage. Love had been replaced by logistics. I bought a newspaper to justify standing and tucked it under my arm. When I looked out again, Gregory rubbed his forehead. Marjorie tapped her phone, calculating. A receipt curled on the dashboard like a white flag that would never be waved. I will go back this afternoon, Gregory said. I will bring just the short form, something she can sign while tea is hot. You will go now, Marjorie said. Bring flowers. Widows are disarmed by gentle things. Use first names. Sit close. Keep the page where her hand falls. If she asks a question, answer a different one. Stay charming. They pulled away. I watched the taillights cut through sun like red punctuation. I stepped outside and stood in the exhaust's fading warmth. The map of the islands unfolded in my mind the way it does when wind tugs the edges. Osprey rookery here, shallow reef there, coves where tide breathes. Jonathan's handwriting skimmed across memory. Use them wisely. Do not feed sharks. I walked to my car and set the basket on the passenger seat. Before I started the engine, I opened the spiral notebook Eleanor gave me and wrote, time, place, vehicle, words. I wrote the phrase, we cannot float another week, and the line about refinancing my home under their umbrella. I underlined agent twice. Then I spoke aloud, just once, to hear my voice keep pace with my spine. I will not sign. I put the car in gear and felt the truth hold, firm as bedrock under tide now. Rachel came just before dinner, still in work flats, hair pulled into a tidy knot that now means meetings. She stood on my porch with a grocery bag of pre-made soup and a smile that kept slipping. I opened the door and left the chain resting against the frame. She noticed and looked away. Habit guards peace, I said. She nodded. We warmed the soup and sat at the kitchen table. Mom, Rachel said, I dropped by to check on you. Gregory told me he and Mr. Crow brought some forms. He thinks they might make things easier. It is just planning. The word just is a rug. People lay over holes, I said. Which forms? Power of attorney, she said. Only if you want it. Taxes are complicated. You should not have to manage those alone. I placed my palm on the linen handkerchief in my lap and felt the stitched J and M, thread against skin, anchor against drift. I am not alone, I said. I have an attorney. I plan in my own time. She exhaled. Gregory says consolidation would help. One umbrella, fewer moving parts. You would not lose control. You would have support. We could set alerts. We could track everything. Who is we? I asked. Us, she said. Gregory and me. Family. Mom, it would mean a lot to me if you would sign. For peace. I do not want tension between my husband and my mother. I took a sip and set the cup down like a gavel. Rachel, may I ask you something? On your wedding day, did you feel valued? She blinked. Of course, she said. It was beautiful. Did you feel valued by everyone who arranged it? I asked. By the way, you were moved like a centerpiece from one photo to the next, by where I was seated. She looked at the window. Weddings are chaos, she said. The planner made choices. I did not see everything. I saw enough, I said. I sat outside with heaters. You glowed. I clapped. But I am asking about you. Did you feel held? Did you feel seen? Her jaw worked. We had a perfect night, she said. Perfect does not need witnesses, I said. You do not have to protect it with me. She cradled the spoon. Gregory is under pressure, she said. His family expects excellence. He is trying. Trying can be decent, I said. Pressure does not excuse control. A document handed to me without my counsel is not care. It is leverage. Her eyes flashed, then softened. Mom, he is my husband. I want my marriage to start without battles. Peace that requires my signature is not peace, I said. It is surrender arranged to look polite. I am asking for help, she said. Help me keep harmony. I can help you without yielding myself, I said. I will cook dinner. I will listen. I will even wait while you and Gregory learn to be a team. But I will not put my life under an umbrella I did not choose. Rachel traced a ring of condensation on the table. Are you hiding something from me? She asked. Privacy is not secrecy, I said. My mother kept the ledger in a tin. She did not pass it around the table to prove love. I am keeping my ledger. That is not a lie. That is adulthood. She swallowed. Gregory worries you will become isolated, she said. He says people take advantage of widows. People do, I said. That is why widows learn to say no. You always were stubborn, she said. Stubborn kept this roof over our heads when your father died, I said. Stubborn raised you. Stubborn paid for braces. Stubborn is what I call staying. She looked at me. She set the spoon down. What if I asked you to sign? She said. Not Gregory. Me. I would tell you the same thing, I said. I do not sign without my attorney. I do not sign what I do not need. I will not turn over my name for convenience. The room settled into the sound of the heater. After a while, she stood and carried our bowls to the sink. We washed and dried in a rhythm we learned. At the door, she hugged me. As she stepped onto the porch, she turned. Mom, she said, will you at least read the short version if we bring it? Bring nothing, I said. Email my attorney. She nodded and left. I closed the door and set the chain. Then I opened Eleanor's notebook and wrote what we said and what we did not. When I finished, I pressed the handkerchief to my cheek. I want Rachel to be happy. I refuse to vanish to get there. Eleanor suggested the Thursday Circle at St. Mark's, a small room where chairs are soft and tea tastes like steadiness. I carried shortbread and the linen handkerchief with J&M stitched, an anchor warmed by my palm and pocket. The sign read, Women's Support and Prayer. No questions at the door, just a chair slid open in the ring. 8 women gathered. Familiar eyes, lived courage, shoes kicked beneath chairs like roots reaching quietly for shared ground that day. Linda coordinated. She placed a basket for phones, a tissue box, then voiced rules so no one needed to guess. Speak briefly, listen fully, Advise only if asked. No rescuing, no fixing. What we hear stays within this room together. She lit a candle and let the quiet stretch until our shoulders lowered and the room agreed to hold it. May said the utility misapplied her payment, mailed a red notice. She shook after waiting, asked courage to call again. Carmen asked steady hands for Friday's infusion and for soup to taste like soup instead of metal or cotton again. Patrice sought patience when her sister flips day into night, and breakfast belongs at 2 a.m. without argument. Sunita wanted her back to hold through holiday pies and customers, to remember civility when the line lengthens late afternoons. Nora asked wisdom for messages swinging tender at noon and cruel by dusk. She keeps, uncertain which voice is real. June prayed for grip strength, Ruth for gas money and calmer nerves, petitions that sounded like survival wearing manners today. When my turn came, I said my daughter married. I sat on a balcony during reception, smiling into the draft. A week later, her husband arrived with lawyer and papers for my signature, convenience waving like a banner beside concern. No one gasped. Heads tipped as a diagnosis gained a name. Linda slid tissues toward me, palm open, unspoken anchor. I answered no. Silence felt like armor until my daughter asked for harmony. Armor bruises when pressed that way sometimes. Under the table, I pressed stitches into my palm and breathed. The cloth remembered me when words threatened to forget. I told them I wanted peace, not the kind purchased with my name or brokered against boundary that keeps me. Patrice smiled with her eyes. Harmony is honest, or it is theater, she said. Music improves when someone tunes it. Nora lifted glasses. My son calls me stubborn when I am consistent, she said. Stubborn is word for a boundary. Sunita poured tea. Do not let anyone rename privacy as secrecy, she said. Generosity does not require exposure to count. June set keys down. Brother brought a form after stroke. She signed and lost her truck. Now reads line carefully. Carmen leaned forward. The clinic recommends a blanket. Her grandmother's shawl gave courage the fleece never could provide. Truly, once. Bring your shawl, Judith, she said. Bring what tells your body it belongs. Let that simple truth steady your hands. Linda asked about practical help. I said I keep a notebook. She mentioned the church notary, available every Tuesday afternoon. She added a retired banker sits Wednesdays in the library answering questions for anyone who asks, without any charge there. We closed with a short prayer. We held quiet, like tent poles. The room breathed and did not need decorating. May slid her daughter's number toward me. A nurse who knows elder law clinics. She underlined hours best for calling. Sunita tucked almond cookies into my tote. Small sweetness wrapped in parchment. The package felt like permission to rest tonight. Carmen circled infusion hours on a card. Company helps here, she said. June offered standing guard on call day nearby. At the threshold, Linda pressed my hand. You are not invisible here, Judith, she said. The sentence landed and held. I believed her. Afternoon light did not diminish me. The sky seemed to side with my bones, steady and blue. The tote rested against Eleanor's notebook on the seat. Armor beside witness. Pages ready for dates, times, exact words safely. People had not tried to fix me. They reminded me I do not have to stand alone inside difficult hours. I took the early appointment so the lobby would be empty and my thoughts would have space. The firm sat above a pharmacy. Receptionist greeted me by name. My attorney, Helen Park, met me with a yellow pad and the calm of people who have seen storms. She led me into a conference room and closed the door. "Let us review what you want," she said, setting the pad between us. "Protection, clarity, and quiet." "Quiet most of all," I said. She smiled. "Then we will build the kind of walls that do not cast shadows." She slid a folder toward me. "Your brother established a revocable trust in your name years ago. We will amend and restate it. Then we will move certain assets to an irrevocable layer. I touch the linen handkerchief. J and M pressed like an oath. First," she said, "successor trustee. At present, it is blank. I recommend a professional fiduciary as first successor, then Rachel as second, but with conditions." "Conditions," I said. "Conservation and stewardship," she answered. "If Rachel serves or benefits, she must maintain the islands as sanctuary. No sale, no subdivision, no collateralization. We add a conservation easement recorded against the deeds." I nodded. Soil remembers. "Second," Helen said, tapping the pad, "a no contest clause. If anyone challenges the trust or any transfer, they forfeit what they might receive. We pair that with an in terrorem provision. It discourages fishing expeditions." She paused. "Third, separate documents. Limited financial power of attorney naming only a licensed fiduciary. No family. Authority narrow and springing on incapacity with 2 physician certifications. A HIPAA release naming me and the fiduciary to obtain records. An advance healthcare directive naming your preferred physician and your neighbor Eleanor as support witness. Not decision maker." "Eleanor will bring tea," I said. "That is exactly what witnesses provide," Helen said. She slid a new draft of my pour-over will across the table. "If stray assets appear, they pour into the trust automatically. We tidy beneficiary designations, title the house to the trust, record quietly. We worked line by line. I initialed margins. I asked about verbs. Helen explained the difference between shall and may. Why and or can sink a boat. How durable can mean too much in the wrong hands. Inside, Resolve walked the perimeter and tested doors. I felt steadier with every clause made plain. "We will also prepare a letter of wishes," she said. "It does not bind a court, but it instructs a trustee. You can speak as a sister and a mother. Not only as an owner, I wrote sentences about ospreys and turtle sand, about the coves Jonathan had marked with stars. I wrote about Rachel, how her kindness deserves a world that does not punish kindness, how love must never be traded for image." A paralegal entered with a red notary stamp. Helen reviewed execution formalities. The paralegal handed me a pen with weight that steadied my fingers. We signed the restatement, then the conservation easement, then the limited power of attorney, then the healthcare directive, then the HIPAA release, then the pour-over will. With each red seal, the air changed. The stamp thudded against paper like a small gavel. Not drama, law. I felt Jonathan's presence at my shoulder. He approved order more than spectacle. "Next steps," Helen said. "We notify the bank, retitle accounts, record the easement and the deed, quietly. Schedule the notary at church for one witness to keep appearances ordinary. I will courier certified copies in a plain envelope. Keep originals in your fireproof box." I opened Eleanor's notebook and wrote every step, dates, offices. Helen noticed the tabs and nodded. "You are already doing the hardest part," she said. "You are being exact." Each step returned my name, fully. I told her about the visit from Gregory and Mr. Crow, about Marjorie's posture, about the insistence on speed. "If they return," she said, "hand them my card and nothing else. If Mr. Crow calls, I will respond in writing only. There is no reason for you to explain boundaries that are already written." "I will not sign what I do not need," I said. "You will not," she agreed. "And you will not stand alone." We reviewed a brief script I could use at the door. "I will consult counsel. Please email any documents. I do not discuss legal matters without representation. Thank you for understanding." Practiced aloud, the sentences felt like sliding a deadbolt with a fingertip. At the end, she brought a brick-colored binder. She placed the originals inside and closed the rings with a soft snap. The weight surprised me. Not heavy, certain. She affixed 3 red tabs along the edge like buoys. The binder felt like weatherproofing after a long storm. I carried the binder to the window and looked down at buses and people with coffees. I did not feel richer. I felt anchored. Outside, life hurried. Inside, the future had a floor. Helen walked me to the threshold. "You have everything you need," she said. "I had it when I walked in," I said. "Today, we gave it shape." She held the door while I stepped into the corridor. I tucked the binder against my ribs as if it were a book I had waited years to read. The story was mine. The ending would be quiet and clear. I waited until the house exhaled the last sounds of evening. The kettle cooled. The brick binder sat on the table like a heart. I carried tea and paper to the porch. The air smelled of rain. The maple whispered. I unfolded the linen handkerchief with our initials stitched in bay blue. J and M lay against my palm, steady as a pulse. "Dear Jonathan," I wrote, and felt the pen hesitate, the way my breath used to when rooms did not plan for me. "You would approve of today. The trust is restated, the easement signed, the healthcare forms complete, the power of attorney narrowed and springing. Each red seal sounded like a gavel tap. Law, not theater. You told me silence could be armor. I believed in theory. Now I know it in bone." When Gregory arrived with his lawyer, I did not argue. I said my attorney would read it first. The door stayed where I placed it. When Rachel asked for harmony, I heard the girl who reached for my hand as a child. I said no and felt the yes beneath it. That yes was dignity, not defiance. At the pharmacy, I heard truth arrive with engine noise. They are not after love. They are after leverage. The wedding cost more than pride can pay. I write so I do not forget when guilt tries to rent a room in my chest. You despised debts that dress as duty. I do too. I remember the chart you unrolled on your blanket. You pointed to the rookery and the coves. You spoke of turtles and sand that remembers by morning. The map lives in the fireproof box, but tonight I hold it in my mind like a lantern. The islands are not only wealth. They keep faith with tides and birds that never learn to flatter. I promise again, I will not sell them. I will not trade sanctuary for spectacle. The porch light drew moths. One rested against the glass. I set my palm over the handkerchief and let the day reach me. Tears came, not as a storm, but as something honest meeting air. I cried for the balcony seat and for how my daughter avoided my eyes when she asked for a signature. I cried for years, spent apologizing for taking up space. I cried for women who opened the door because they were taught refusal is unkind. The crying ended the way rain ends, with quiet and a clean smell. When the last tear cooled, I felt taller. Not taller in inches, taller in belonging. I could hear your voice, not as command, but as company. "Jude, You know what to do. Use signatures, not speeches. Use boundaries, not noise. I whispered the words like an oath, and the porch agreed by staying still. I wrote a line for Rachel. My love is not on paper. It is under it. It is the table itself, steady and quiet. I wrote a line for myself. I am not invisible in my own house. Then I folded the page and wrapped it in the handkerchief, as if cloth could teach ink to keep a promise. Inside, the binder waited. I slid the letter into the back pocket where no one looks and closed the rings. The click sounded ordinary. That is the point. I turned off the porch light and let the moth find night. The house held its shape. My body did too. If you were here, you would make tea I would pretend was better than mine. You would remind me leadership is mostly logistics and love. I am learning to lead my own small republic. Doors lock when I ask. Meals taste like food again. Grief can sit without taking every chair. Thank you for trusting me with land and with an idea. Armor, not trophy. Tonight, I understand the weight of both. I signed the bottom with my full name and the date. I sat until the cup went cool and the wind shifted. I did not need the letter to travel. It had already delivered what I needed most. Authority returned to its owner. It returned to me. The bell rang after lunch, one clear note. Through the window, I saw Gregory on the porch with his mother, Marjorie. Behind them, Rachel stood a step lower, arms folded against the wind. I opened the door and left the chain set. Judith, Marjorie said, lifting a bouquet that looked borrowed from a lobby. We brought flowers. We hoped to clear the air. I unhooked the chain and stepped back only to the rug. You may come in, I said, for tea. They filed into the kitchen. The brick binder sat on the table. I placed 4 cups. Gregory held a manila envelope. Short forms, he said lightly. Nothing complicated. Streamlined authority so we can handle details if anything happens. A signature here would bring everyone relief. Families function on trust, Marjorie said. Paperwork only reflects the love already present. Rachel pulled out a chair and sat, coat still on. I nodded to the envelope. Set it down, I said. Gregory slid a pen toward me. I did not touch it. I lifted a white card from the binder and placed it between us. The letters were black and plain. I do not sign any papers without my attorney. Gregory's mouth flattened. This is the short version, he said. Your attorney can review the long one later. The short version is still a signature, I said. And a signature is still a surrender if I have not asked for it. Marjorie leaned in. Judith, dear, you are making this heavier than it needs to be. Control can be exhausting at your stage. Allow the young to carry the load. Control is not the word for my name, I said. It is the word for what you want. She set the bouquet on the counter. We are offering help, she said. Refusing help is unkind when a family is trying to move forward. Help requires consent, I said. Consent is not a pen pressed into my hand. Gregory exhaled. There are bills, taxes, consolidations, he said. We need authority to tidy what is untidy. What is untidy? I asked. Wedding items, he said too quickly. Vendors expect coordination. The videographer has deadlines. Those are not my items, I said. Coordinate your own. He glanced at Rachel, seeking a teammate. She looked at her hands, then at me again. Not peace yet, but alignment taking its first breath. We respect your independence, he said. This is risk management, protecting you from predatory actors, streamlining unavoidable tasks. I am protecting myself, I said. I am also protecting my daughter from crisis decisions made under pressure. Crisis is already here, Marjorie said softly. You may not know the numbers, but we do. Let us act. Email my attorney, I said. Any numbers you believe relevant can travel there. If you insist on barriers, you will push this family apart, she said. Barriers keep structures standing, I said. A door is not hostility, it is design. Gregory tapped the envelope. Will you at least look? I have looked, I said. At the way urgency knocks and calls itself care. I folded the linen handkerchief in my lap. Stitches met my fingertips like a reminder. I turned to Rachel. Are you comfortable with this? I asked. Do you want me to sign away authority today? Her eyes filled. She shook her head almost invisibly. I want peace, she said quietly. But not this way. Rachel, Marjorie warned. My daughter kept her gaze on me. Gregory gathered the envelope, but not before a corner flashed a box labeled immediate and durable. I met his eyes. You brought authority you do not deserve, I said. You will leave with the envelope you arrived with. He stood. We will consult counsel, he said. Please do, I said. I slid Helen Park's card across the table. All communication goes through her. I will respond in writing only Marjorie Rose. Petals brushed the floor. You are choosing loneliness, she said. I am choosing boundaries, I said. Loneliness is what arrives when boundaries are absent. At the door, I held it open. Gregory paused on the threshold. You are making a mistake, he said. You do not understand what you are risking. I understand exactly, I said. I risk displeasing you. I will survive that loss. They stepped onto the porch. Rachel lingered. She reached out, squeezed my hand once, and whispered, Thank you. Then she followed them down the steps, shoulders squared as if a new weight had settled into its rightful place. I closed the door and set the chain. Inside, the house reclaimed its air. I wrote the time in Eleanor's notebook and poured the remaining tea. The card still sat on the table, ordinary and final. Power had not raised its voice. It had simply refused to move. Rachel arrived after dark, hair escaping the knot she wears for meetings. She did not ring. She tapped once and let her hand fall. I opened the door before the second thought formed. She stepped inside and dropped her purse on the bench. I locked the door. In the kitchen, she kept her coat on. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. I set water to boil and pulled 2 mugs from the rack. Mom, she said, then covered her mouth. Tears slid fast, then steady. I handed her a clean towel and waited. Waiting is an action. It clears space for truth. She spread both hands on the counter. Mom, she said again. Voice scraped thin. I was left out of my own wedding. The sentence landed and did not break. I slid a mug toward her. Chamomile, simple and warm. Her shoulders shook. The towel darkened. She tried to apologize, and I shook my head. Crying is honest, I said. Keep going. They moved me like furniture, she said. Smile here, pivot there. Stand by the cake, now by the arch, now by the door. When I asked to sit with you for 5 minutes, the planner said the timeline couldn't bend. Gregory told me to trust the process. That image mattered. She laughed without mirth. Do you know the only time I stood still? She asked. When the videographer changed batteries. That's when I looked up and saw you on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket. I wanted to come. They pulled me to the next tableau. You saw me, I said. I saw you, she said, and fresh tears came. I did not come. The kettle clicked off. I poured water over tea. She cupped the mug with both hands. Since the wedding, she said, it has been invoices and calls. Marjorie keeps saying everything is under control if we move quickly. Gregory talks like a project manager. He says we when he means I. He asked me to persuade you. I did. I am ashamed I did. I let the words sit. What do you want now? I asked. I want peace that does not erase me, she said. I want to sit at a table without auditioning for permission. I opened a drawer today, she added, and found a spreadsheet titled Wedding Float. Charges on 3 cards and a note that says, Refinance Judith. I confronted him. He said I misread, that it's a concept, that everyone does it. She looked at me then, eyes bright with tired courage. I know it is wrong. I know he is wrong. And I am afraid that saying so will tear my new life in half. I reached into my pocket and found the linen handkerchief with J and M stitched. I set it beside her hand. Hold this, I said. It belongs to steadiness. She pressed the cloth. Her breathing slowed. I do not want to be the reason anyone drowns, she whispered. You are not water, I said. You are a person. A person is allowed to want air. She laughed once, then sobbed. I pulled her against me. Her forehead found the hollow below my collarbone. We stood like that, 2 heartbeats learning to keep time again. Tears finished when they were ready. When she lifted her head, the towel had become heavy with proof. I traded it for the handkerchief. Listen, I said, you do not need to fix this tonight. You need to remember who you are. She nodded. Who am I? She asked. You are a woman who deserves rooms that see her, I said. You are a daughter whose mother will not sell her name for someone else's comfort. You are allowed to say no, I want to, she said. I do not know how. We will practice, I said. Start small. Keep your paycheck in your own account. Ask Gregory for numbers, not adjectives. Choose counseling if it helps. And do not carry his mother's urgency. She let out a long breath. Will you still love me if I stumble? She asked. I will love you if you fall asleep at the table, I said. I will love you if you knock on my door at midnight. My love is not on paper. It is under it. It is the table itself. She placed her cheek in my palm. Thank you, she said. We ate toast with butter and honey. I walked her to the door and set the chain after she left. The house felt full again. I wrote in Eleanor's notebook. Tonight, my daughter told the truth. Then I wrote one more line. 2 women stood up without standing down. I rinsed the cups, turned off the light, and felt steadiness settle like tide over rock at home. The message arrived by accident. My phone buzzed with a voicemail transcription, Gregory's voice tight with strain. I pressed play and stood. Marjorie, the florist is past due, and the venue wants the second wire. The platinum is at its limit, the rate kicked up. Crow says the short form needs a wet signature. He thinks we can get it if I keep it pleasant. Judith keeps saying her attorney will read it first. She is not confused at all. My name sounded like a problem to solve. Paper rustled. A chair scraped. I cannot go back to the club without paying Barton for the cigars. He already posted photos from the wedding. Everyone thinks I came into money. If we stall, the story falls apart. You said you would cover the bridge on your card until the refinance clears. Marjorie's voice bled through, thin and precise. Reputation costs more to repair than to maintain. Leaders do not ask permission. Decisive sons keep families aloft. Then a click. The voicemail ended. I stood still. The sink dripped once. Leader, in her mouth, felt like a coat 2 sizes too large thrown over a shivering boy. It did not excuse him. It explained the draft. That afternoon, I walked past a coffee shop. Through the window, I saw Gregory at a table with Mr. Crow. Gregory's knee bounced. Crow's pen tapped a woodpecker rhythm. I went in for water. I stood near the bar where voices carry if you stop trying to hear. We can restructure once we have agency, Crow said. One signature, then we move assets under a consolidated umbrella. Vendors can be paid. The refinances proceed. Gregory rubbed his temples. She is stubborn. She keeps this notebook like a cop. She writes everything down. I did not expect homework. Crow smiled without warmth. Most widows want relief. She has a lawyer's script. She has a lawyer, Gregory said, and a neighbor who looks like air but moves like granite. I stirred a straw through ice. If we do not present urgency, Crow said, we will be negotiating from weakness. You need a narrative. Health, confusion, logistics, travel. Anything that frames signature as kindness, I can say taxes, Gregory offered. Everyone fears taxes. Crow nodded. Bring copies. Keep it orderly. Do not let her read alone. Gregory leaned back. I promised Rachel I would make this seamless. I told her I was building a life for us. I cannot show her that the numbers are smoke. So do not, Crow said. Bring her mother under management and the smoke clears. I stepped out and let the door close on their plan. That evening from my porch, clouds piled over the bay like receipts. I tried on the word hunger and found it fit what I had seen. Not hunger for bread, hunger for display, the kind fed by applause and punished by silence. Gregory chased applause the way moths chase porch light. Every light turns hot. I remembered his mother at the wedding, how she arranged photographers like chess pieces and called it care. In her house, power rehearsed in the mirror until the reflection clapped. She had trained a son to confuse pressure with leadership. That training found its way to my kitchen with a bouquet and an envelope. I wrote a note in Eleanor's book, Mirror of Hunger, the need to be seen as solvent when the wallet is hollow, the urge to borrow a mother to pay a boy's debt. I underlined it twice. Seeing is not forgiving. It is refusing to be fooled. Before bed, I listened to the voicemail again, not for cruelty, but for calibration. Gregory feared humiliation more than debt. He wanted a story to hold together even if the numbers did not. That makes a man dangerous around paper. He will call control generosity and speed protection. He will name surrender peace. I turned off the lamp and held the handkerchief. Jonathan warned me about flattery dressed as help. Tonight, I learned another costume. Hunger dresses as leadership and asks for a pen. My answer would remain a lock. My voice, a key turned once and left still, for good now. I brought soup to Eleanor's bungalow on a gray afternoon. She opened the door in a cardigan the color of oatmeal and waved me in with a laugh. The living room smelled of lemon oil and soil. A radio whispered 40s music. We set bowls on the coffee table and sat where cushions had learned our shapes. Tell me about your day, she said. I have been steady, I answered. But steadiness has a cost. I can hear them planning when the house is quiet. Eleanor lifted her spoon, then set it down. I should tell you something I rarely finish, she said. You need the whole of it, not the polite version. I waited. Waiting is an action. It slows panic and clears vision. It was the winter after surgery, she said. I was groggy and grateful. The room was a white box that hummed. A nurse with kind eyes brought water and told me to rest. My son arrived with his wife and a folder. He kissed my forehead and said he had handled everything so I would not worry. He said the hospital needed signatures for insurance and temporary support. She rubbed her forearm as if it still carried adhesive. He used my first name the way doctors do. He kept his tone sweet. He placed the clipboard where my hand already lay. The pages looked friendly, durable, assistance, coordination. I signed the highlighted places. The nurse witnessed. I slept. 2 weeks later, she went home. He had already visited the bank, she said. The power of attorney was general and immediate. He borrowed against the house to pay cards and a truck. He moved a certificate of deposit and changed a mailing address. When I discovered it, he cried. He called it a misunderstanding. He said I had agreed silence finished the sentence for her. I wanted to believe him because I wanted a son, she said. Wanting can be a trap. What happened? I asked. The bank was polite and precise, she said. They showed me my signature. They explained durable. They pointed to the line waving accounting. My lawyer was good, but late. We saved what we could. We sold the big house because the payments had become a harness. I bought this bungalow with cash left like crumbs. My son stopped calling. When he did, he asked for gas money. She smiled. I do not tell you this for pity, she said. I tell you so you will not climb into a chair I have already occupied. Paper can be armor. In the wrong hands, it is a trap door. I pressed the stitches of the linen handkerchief in my pocket. J and M, thread against skin. Thank you, I said. Hearing it matters. There are parts I still cannot say without heat, she said. The day I packed the porch swing. The day I watched strangers carry out my kitchen table. The neighbor who said I should forgive because he is family, and men are simple. Forgiveness is not a locksmith. We sat quiet. The radio hummed. In her story, I saw my doorway, and the pen waiting where my hand might fall if I were tired. I could have said no in the hospital, she added, but I was taught that no is sharp and women should be soft. I have learned a new shape. Soft can say no. Soft does not mean open to harm. I reached for her hand. You are not alone, I said. Neither are you, she replied. You have a binder and a backbone. Use both. She stood and returned with a small tin. Inside lay extra keys and a sheet of names. My locksmith, a banker who explains without jargon, a notary who will come to your porch. If they arrive again, call the notary first. Make them wait. Waiting reveals intent. I placed the tin in my bag. The weight was not heavy. It was clarity. We walked to her door. Rain began, a clean pattern on the steps. She hooked the chain and measured me like a hem. Jude, she said, I lost my porch swing because I trusted a child who was not behaving like a son. Do not trust a man who is not behaving like a husband. Trust the paper you signed with your own clear mind. On the walk home, I saw my future if I confused kindness with surrender. It ran through a hospital, into a bank, out through a door that no longer opened for me. I chose the other path. I carried soup and keys and the steady knowledge that friendship can be a lantern. In its light, I saw the trap, and I saw the way around it. Friendship stayed while I stepped past the hole. The knock came at dusk. 3 firm raps, evenly spaced, like someone measuring a wall before hanging a heavy frame. I stood in the hallway with the brick binder under my arm. The porch light was off. The house held its breath. I walked to the door and set my palm on the latch. The metal was cool. Through the peephole, I saw Gregory's suit and the slope of his shoulders. A florist's van idled at the curb. Sun bled out behind the maple, turning the glass into a strip of copper. He knocked again. "Judith," he called. "We should talk." I brought revised papers. It will take 5 minutes. I did not open. The habit of my life rose to greet me, the habit that used to say yes before my mouth knew the question. I let the habit pass like weather. I stayed still with my hand on the latch and felt my backbone arrive. The binder's weight reminded me of the room where Helen Park stamped red circles into law. I shifted it to my hip and breathed. Armor, not trophy. Jonathan's sentence fit the moment like a key. "Judith," Gregory said, softer now, "I have a bouquet for you. We want to make this easy. Easy is a costume." I kept my voice even. "Please email any documents to my attorney," I said through the door. "I do not discuss legal matters without her." Silence. Then the faint sound of paper sliding against a folder. "These are the simplified versions," he said. "Short forms. We only need initials." "I will not review anything at the door," I said. "Email my attorney." Behind him, someone cleared. A throat. Marjorie. I could not see her through the peephole, but I could feel the direction of her gaze, as if she were aligning a camera. "We are trying to protect you," she said. "You are making this adversarial." "This is a boundary," I said. "A boundary is not a fight." He knocked once more, quick and light. "If you do not open, we cannot fix this," he said. Fix. Another costume. I rested my forehead against the wood and let the grains steady me. On the hall table, Eleanor's notebook lay open to a fresh page. I pictured the date, the time, the words I would write. Wait long enough, and intent reveals itself. "Your daughter wants peace," Marjorie tried. "My daughter wants to be seen," I said. "Peace is not purchased with my name." I reached into my pocket and pressed the linen handkerchief with J and M stitched blue. Thread answered skin. Breath found depth. I could have opened. I could have been polite and poured tea and let the pen creep toward my hand. Instead, I turned the deadbolt until it settled with a soft click. I did it slowly, so I would remember the sound. Control can be as quiet as that. "Judith," Gregory said, voice tight now, "you are forcing us to escalate." "Communicate with my attorney," I said. "Good night." A pause. Shoes shifted on the mat. Paper rustled again. He set something at the base of the door, then footsteps retreated down the steps. The van door slid shut. Engine noise faded until it was only evening again. I stood without moving and listened to the house fill back up with itself. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe ticked. Somewhere, a neighbor watered plants and the hose snapped against cement. I placed the binder on the console and opened Eleanor's notebook. I wrote exactly what had happened. Knock at dusk. Revised papers. Bouquet offered as key. Door not opened. Sentences used. Threat implied. I underlined the line about the deadbolt. Then I knelt and picked up the envelope Gregory had slid beneath the door. I did not open it. I slipped it into a large plastic sleeve marked "Hold for Counsel" and set it atop the binder. The sleeve turned their urgency into an object that could wait. At the kitchen sink, I rinsed a cup and made tea. Steam rose in a straight ribbon. I carried the mug back to the hall and stood facing the door, the way a sailor faces the horizon to learn the sea. Some thresholds protect. Some thresholds test. Tonight, mine had done both. I said the words aloud so they would belong to me. I choose the latch. I choose the lock. I choose when the door opens. The house seemed to nod. I turned away and felt the old habit loosen like a knot finally agreeing to release. Control is not loud. It is a mother who hears knocking and decides to keep the night. It is a door that obeys the hand that pays the mortgage. It is a woman who remembers she is not a hallway between other people's rooms. I turned off the porch light and let the dusk finish its work. After the house settled from the knocking, I carried the brick binder to my bedroom and opened the fireproof box in the closet. Winter blankets folded back like gray waves. I lifted the leather folder and the rolled chart Jonathan had pressed into my hands that last winter. At the desk, I loosened the linen tie and let the map unfurl across the wood. The paper breathed, a quiet exhale of bays and channels. Green freckles marked the chain of aisles. Blue veins traced the routes a small boat could thread at high tide. Jonathan's notes walked the margins in his square hand. Osprey rookery here, shallow reef here, fresh spring here. He had drawn small stars where sunset sits the longest. I set my palm on the largest island and felt the cool of paper answer my skin. I spoke to him as if he were pouring tea in the next room. I will keep them. I will keep them whole. No sale, no subdivision, no collateral. These are not chips. These are shores. They belong to wind and tide and the soft feet of birds that do not know cameras. They will be sanctuary. If Rachel inherits, she will inherit stewardship, not spectacle. I traced a channel with my finger, slow as prayer. A porch moth tapped the window pane. The sound was small and patient, like everything that survives weather by refusing to panic. I thought of Gregory's envelope sealed in the plastic sleeve and felt the old pull toward explaining. The map answered with its stillness. I did not owe anyone a show. I wrote one sentence on a card and tucked it into the folder with the deeds. Soil remembers. The words steadied me more than any speech. Land keeps record without bitterness. Shorelines forget no tide, yet they do not hold grudges. They simply shape themselves to truth and wait for the wave to pass. I folded the chart along its old creases, careful to keep the edges clean. I returned it to the tube and tied the linen cord. The fireproof box clicked when I closed it. Plain sound. Good sound. I slid the box back behind the blankets and turned off the closet light. At the desk, I opened Eleanor's notebook and wrote tonight's vow. Keep the aisles whole. Teach Rachel the tides. Guard the rookery. Pay the caretaker well. Say no quickly and kindly. Say yes only to stewardship. Mail a copy of the easement to the county clerk and to Helen's office. Dates, tasks, steps that make a promise practical. When I turned toward the window, the moth had left. The glass showed only my face and the faint line of dawn beginning to suggest itself behind the maple. I rested my hand over my heart the way it had rested over the map. The beat was even. The house felt settled. I whispered the sentence again so the walls could keep it with me. The vow felt simple. Soil remembers. Helen met me at the county building just after opening. A thin winter sun climbed the courthouse steps with us. She carried a messenger bag and the quiet confidence of people who keep chaos outside the margins. I brought the brick binder and a small tin of cookies. The security guard recognized Helen and waved us through. We stepped into the recorder's office. "Today is paperwork justice," Helen said. "We file, we record, we notify. No speeches, only signatures." We sat at a side counter. She opened a stack of documents prepared after our last meeting. On top lay the amended and restated trust. Behind it, the conservation easement. Then the limited power of attorney. Then the letter of wishes. Then deeds titling the house into the trust. "First, your signature as grantor and trustee," she said. "Then we acknowledge before the notary. After recording, the trust owns what the trust owns. Your boundaries are not suggestions." I signed where yellow flags asked me to. Slow, clear letters. The notary slid the journal forward, checked my identification, and pressed an embosser into the paper. The device breathed out a crisp seal. Then came the red stamp. Thud. The sound landed inside my ribs like a simple drum. We moved to the conservation easement. The language declared the islands a protected sanctuary. No sale, no subdivision, no collateral, no mineral extraction, no commercial overnight development. Reasonable caretaking allowed. Access by invitation only. Helen had added a clause that made me exhale. Any beneficiary who attempts to undo the easement forfeits all rights. I initialed every page. The notary lifted the stamp. Thud. "Next," Helen said, "the letter of wishes. It does not command. It guides." I read what I had written the night of tea and maps, then added a line about the osprey and about hiring a school to help with shoreline cleanups. I signed. Thud. Calm walked the room. We recorded the deeds transferring title of my house into the trust. The clerk accepted fees, slid the documents under a glass partition, and stamped in a steady rhythm. She handed me certified copies. The weight felt like a house deciding to sit on its own foundation. Helen opened a final folder. "Disposition of residue and successor instructions," she said. "This is the twist that makes the story honest." She pointed to a section. "If Rachel serves as successor trustee or inherits distribution, she must maintain the islands as a permanent sanctuary. She must not sell, must not encumber, must not license any venture that compromises habitat. Violation converts her share to a charitable gift for coastal restoration." I read the sentence twice. It did not feel like punishment. It felt like a handrail. "She will be steward or she will abstain," I said. "She loves you," Helen said. "These terms protect her from pressure. When someone tries to shove, she can point to the paper." I signed. The notary stamped. Thud. We left the recorder's office and walked to a bank 2 blocks away. The manager met us in a small glass room that smelled of coffee and policy. Helen handed over certificates, the trust's identification number, and a letter instructing that all personal accounts be retitled in the name of the trust with me as trustee. The manager photocopied, typed, printed, and slid forms across the table. He clipped them together and shook our hands. "Consider your accounts properly dressed," he said. Back outside, pigeons rehearsed ownership of the steps. Helen checked items off a list. "Courier will take certified copies to my file. County will mail conformed copies. Here is your stamped original easement. Keep it with the chart. If a storm blows, this piece of paper is a seawall." We returned to my house to organize. I slid the easement behind the chart and tucked both into the fireproof box. The binder received certified copies, business cards, and a new laminated sheet with my sentences for the door. I brewed tea. Helen opened the cookies and took one like a sacrament. "Judith," she said, You have built a fortress that does not look like a fight. I felt the truth of that. My breath fell into step with the red thuds still echoing in memory. I called Rachel and asked her to stop by after work. Helen stayed. When my daughter arrived, she stood in the doorway and looked at the binder as you look at a lighthouse. I told her what we had done, the way the trust holds, the way the easement works, the condition written for her protection. She listened, eyes bright with dignity returning. You are giving me a future I will not have to apologize for, she said. I am giving you a boundary you can point to, I said. If anyone demands access, show them the seal. Helen explained the clause in steady language. Rachel placed her hand on the binder. For a second, I saw her as a girl, tracing maps at the kitchen table. She nodded. I accept stewardship, she said. If I inherit, I keep it whole. I set the handkerchief on the table between us. We touched it together, 3 fingertips resting on thread, the color of the bay. The house listened. Somewhere a truck downshifted. Inside, everything felt level. The last stamp still echoed like a heart that had finally found its right pace. Today. Rachel came back the next evening just as the streetlights blinked on. She paused at the threshold like someone checking whether the world still permitted grace. I opened the door before she knocked. She stepped in and wrapped her arms around me with a fierceness that belonged to the little girl who used to run from the playground straight into my coat. She didn't let go quickly. Neither did I. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, for pushing you to sign, for not seeing you at my own wedding. For letting image speak louder than love, I guided her to the kitchen. The binder sat on the table like a lighthouse. The handkerchief rested beside it like a flag the wind respects. I poured tea and waited. Waiting is hospitality when words still gather themselves. Gregory called after I left work, she said. He wanted me to pressure you again. He said we should act as a united front. I told him unity is not a mask to hide behind. I told him I would not stand between you and your attorney anymore. How did he take that? I asked. He talked about optics, she said. I told him I was done with optics. I'm not a photograph. She took a breath. I am ashamed that I let the wedding swallow me. I kept telling myself I would come sit beside you once the next photo was done. There was always a next photo. You are sitting with me now, I said. She nodded. I read the easement, she added, tapping the binder lightly. I accept it. If I ever inherit, I will keep the islands whole. I will not trade sanctuary for spectacle. I reached across and placed my hand over hers. Then we are on the same shoreline, I said. She looked at me as if the sentence rearranged the furniture of her chest. Tears came, clean and ordinary. I need a mother who knows where her edges are, she said. I need to learn that for myself. The door of this house is always open, I said, but the paperwork is not. She breathed out a small, relieved laugh. I can live with that. We ate toast with butter and apple slices Eleanor had left on my porch with a note that said, "For courage." Rachel told me she planned to meet with a counselor from the church office hours. She would keep her direct deposit separate and ask for the wedding numbers in writing. She would not sign anything on a doorstep. She would not translate someone else's hurry into her emergency. Does that make me disloyal? She asked. It makes you responsible, I said. Loyalty without honesty is a costume that chafes. She sipped her tea. I might stay with you for a few nights, she said. Not as a retreat. As a reset, your room has clean sheets, I said. I kept the quilt you like. We carried a spare suitcase from the closet. She packed slowly, like someone choosing what to keep, not just what to wear. I did not say much. I don't need to narrate my love. I set pillows and made space on the bathroom shelf. Before bed, she stood in the doorway of the guest room, hand on the frame. "Thank you," she said, "for not putting your love on paper." "My love is the table itself," I said. "It holds." She smiled and went to brush her teeth. I sat with the binder a moment longer, grateful the law could keep calm while hearts took their time. Outside, a dog barked twice, and a truck downshifted on the avenue. Inside, peace moved with a human pace. Light switches clicked. Water ran. Then quiet settled like a blanket finally big enough for both of us. I wrote one line in Eleanor's notebook. She returned without bargaining. Then I put the kettle on for morning and turned out the light. Before sleep, her phone buzzed with a text from Gregory asking for unity. She silenced it and slipped the phone face down into a drawer. We did not discuss it. We had answered. Soil remembers. So do mothers. So do daughters. I set the table in the dining room the way my mother did when she wanted a day to mean itself. A white cloth, plain china, 2 cups already warming with steam. The brick binder rested on the sideboard, not as a centerpiece, but as a lighthouse. I pulled the center chair back and let my hand rest on its rail. I remembered the balcony seat with the space heater humming and the draft sneaking under the drapes. Then I sat in the middle of my own house. Eleanor knocked her 3 light taps and stepped in when I called her name. She carried a bag of pears and a smile that understood long distances crossed by short walks. She paused when she saw me seated. "Look at you," she said. "In your own place at the table." "In my place," I said. "Not a spare seat." Not an afterthought. She took the chair at my right. Nothing fancy. Curtains up, plates simple, everything arranged to hold, not to impress. I poured tea. The steam lifted like a blessing. "How is Rachel?" she asked. "She is sleeping," I said. She put her phone in a drawer and did not apologize for resting. "Counseling starts next week. She is keeping her accounts and her footing." "Footing is half of freedom," Eleanor said. We ate pear slices and watched winter sun pour an amber stripe across the wood. I told her about the filings, the clerk's steady stamp, the conservation easement written like a shore-taking shape. Each red thud carried calm. No fireworks, only law finding its place. "Paperwork justice," she said, smiling. "The kind that does not need applause." I set my hand over the linen handkerchief on the cloth. "I thought about bringing out the chart," I said. "But I decided to leave it in the box. I can hold it in my mind. Rookery here, reef there, stars where sunset sits." "You do not need proof to know the truth," she said. "You have built it into the day." We spoke about small things. The price of eggs, a neighbor's new dog that sings at sirens, the church bulletin asking for rose pruners. Ordinary talk felt like a new room. I did not have to hurry to deserve sitting here. Eleanor set her cup down. "Say the sentence," she said. I looked at the chair that would no longer be nudged aside for anyone else's map. "I am not invisible. Not today. Not ever again." Sunlight jumped on the rim of her cup. "There it is," she said. "Now, the room knows it too." I breathed. The house felt as if it believed me. I told her Rachel had accepted the condition. If she inherits, she will keep the islands whole. No sale, no subdivision, no collateral. If anyone tries to pry, the paper will answer before she has to. Stewardship looks good on you, Eleanor said, and on her. Some clothes fit only after a certain age. We drew our chairs a little closer, not for defense, for comfort. I remembered the planner waving me to the balcony and calling it quieter. Quieter is not the same as valued. Here, the quiet belonged to us. Do you miss the old house? She asked. I miss who I was in it, I said, but I am her here too. A sparrow landed on the sill and approved of our crumbs with a quick nod. Thank you for the day you brought the notebook, I said, and the pie, and the sentence about not being invisible. You wrote the rest, she said. I only tapped the line where you already knew to sign. We laughed, and a hinge I had not noticed loosened. The balcony chair faded into a story I could tell without bruising. Will you keep this chair? She asked, touching the center backrest. I will, I said. When others visit, I will still sit here. If someone suggests the corner, I will pour tea from the center. The light shifted, the stripe narrowed. Evening rehearsed itself on the floor. I walked her to the door later, and she stood on the threshold with her tote. We both looked back at the table. The chair waited, certain exactly where it belonged. You did it, she said. Not alone, I said. She squeezed my hand and stepped into the mild cold. I closed the door and set the latch with the smallest click. Then I returned to the table and sat in the center again, as if to sign the room a second time. The house answered by holding still. Nothing borrowed, nothing owed, only a chair and a woman choosing it. The circle closed without noise. Light, as if on cue, settled across my shoulders and stayed. I walked to the shoreline just after sunrise and let the wind lift the edges of my scarf. Waves unstitched themselves against the rocks and stitched back again with patient hands. I did not ask for a sign. I did not bargain with the day. I only pressed my palm to my chest and spoke in a voice small enough to belong to the water. Peace is something I signed to keep for myself. I will honor what was entrusted. I will protect what remembers. I thought of the chair at my table and the way light crowned it yesterday afternoon. I thought of Rachel sleeping down the hall, breathing like a tide that has finally found its rhythm. I thought of Eleanor's steady knock and Helen's red seals thudding like a kind heart. I am not invisible, not today, not ever again. Soil remembers. So do sisters and daughters and the homes that hold them. I walked back, brewed tea, and opened Eleanor's notebook for the last entry of this story. Date, clear weather, shoreline bright. Action taken, mercy chosen. If you were here beside me, you would see ordinary things. A kettle, a pen, a binder resting where a centerpiece might sit. That is what victory looks like in a quiet house. Not a trumpet. A table that does not wobble. If you have ever been sidelined at your own celebration, ask yourself a simple question. Will I stay outside, or will I move my chair to the center of my life? If you have ever been asked to sign away your name for someone else's comfort, remember what I learned at a door I did not open. No is a complete sentence when dignity is at stake. Before we say goodbye, we would love to know. Where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee? Or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel. Not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, we hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle does not knock on your door. It waits quietly until you are ready to open your heart. Take care, and we will see you in the next story. If you have ever felt dismissed, will you keep silence to guard your worth? If you have ever stood at the edges, what will you do to step into the center? Leave your answer. Lend your courage. Take what you need. The door is open. The paperwork is signed. The sea is listening. Before I close this notebook, I want to leave you with a practice you can keep. Choose a chair in your home and claim it as yours. Sit there tomorrow. Breathe there. Make a cup of tea and set your hand on your pulse. Say a steady sentence out loud. I am allowed to choose. Write today's date on a card and list a boundary you will keep. Put the card under your cup as a coaster and let life rest on top. When fear knocks, read the sentence and keep your latch. When kindness calls, open. This is how quiet justice begins, not with thunder, but with a mother at a table, knowing she belongs.